Today, we're exploring a book that's been making waves in the climate science community, Lukewarming, The New Climate Science That Changes Everything, by Patrick J. Michaels and Paul C. Knappenberger. This book challenges the mainstream narrative on climate change and offers a perspective that's both compelling and controversial. So, grab your headphones and let's get started. Lukewarming is a term that might not be familiar to everyone, but it's gaining traction among those who believe that the climate is changing, but not in the dramatic, catastrophic way often portrayed in the media. The authors, Patrick J. Michaels and Paul C. Knappenberger, argue that the evidence points to a more moderate warming trend, one that's far less alarming than what we often hear about. The book begins with a fascinating look at the incentive structures within the scientific community. Michaels and Knappenberger suggest that there's a bias towards alarmism because it attracts more funding and attention. They point to the U.S. national climate assessments as examples of this, claiming that these reports often exaggerate the impacts of climate change to support certain policy agendas. One of the most intriguing aspects of the book is its exploration of the lukewarming perspective. The authors argue that while carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases do exert a warming pressure on the lower atmosphere, the effects are milder than what climate models have predicted. They highlight that for nearly 30 years, these models have consistently overestimated the amount of warming we should expect from increased carbon dioxide levels. Michaels and Knappenberger delve into the history of climate science, noting that the concept of lukewarming isn't new. In fact, it's been around for decades, with scientists like Judith Curry and Will Happer contributing to the discussion. They emphasize the importance of skepticism and critical thinking in science, suggesting that the current climate change narrative often lacks these crucial elements. The authors also discuss the role of sulfate aerosols in climate models. They argue that these aerosols have been used as a band-aid to help models simulate past climate conditions more accurately. However, they question the validity of this approach, suggesting that it allows modelers to hold on to their paradigms longer than they should. What I find particularly fascinating is the book's critique of the availability cascade in climate science. Michaels and Knappenberger argue that this cascade, a self-reinforcing process of collective belief formation, has led to a distorted view of climate change. They believe that the media, politicians, and even some scientists have contributed to this cascade by focusing on extreme weather events and their supposed links to human activity. The authors provide examples of how this cascade works, such as the way certain studies are highlighted in the media despite questionable methodologies or conclusions. They cite the case of sea level rise, where adjustments to data have been made to fit a narrative of accelerating sea level rise, even when the underlying data don't support such claims. One of the most thought-provoking sections of the book is its discussion of the Paris Agreement. Michaels and Knappenberger argue that the agreement is more about politics than science, suggesting that it's a lukewarm agreement for a lukewarm world. They point out that the commitments made by countries are largely voluntary and unenforceable, and that the agreement itself is unlikely to have a significant impact on global temperatures. The authors also critique the way climate change is often linked to other societal issues, such as poverty, disease, and national security. They argue that this grand narrative is misleading and distracts from the real challenges we face. They believe that the focus should be on adapting to climate change rather than trying to prevent it entirely, which they see as unrealistic given current political and technological constraints. In conclusion, Lukewarming offers a refreshing and provocative take on the climate change debate. It challenges us to question the prevailing narrative and consider alternative perspectives. While some may disagree with the author's conclusions, the book is a valuable contribution to the discussion, encouraging us to think critically and engage with the science in a more nuanced way. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Lukewarming. I hope it's sparked your curiosity and given you some food for thought. If you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend picking up a copy of the book. And as always, feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Until next time, keep learning and stay curious.
Visit brightlearn.ai for more fascinating videos like this one, and naturalnews.com for full editorial coverage and breaking news on critical stories that keep you informed and aware of what's really going on.